Hello and good day, everyone. Welcome to your fifth week of S3H and your fourth live webinar with Cass and myself. I'm very excited to share this week. I know that with all the activity going on in the WhatsApp apps group, um, that there's a lot of progress, and it's just so heartening to see and all the change that is happening. So this week four and the way that we've set it up couldn't come at a better time. So I'm very, very excited to share with you what we have coming up for the session. So what is the title for this session? And it is about being the change you want to experience. So really stepping into your dream future. And what I mean by that, and we'll get into it a little bit more as we go along, is that, let's not wait for us to be that 10, 20 or more kilos lighter before we actually start living the life that we want to live. I think that has always been one of my problems in the past, in that, that I would wait until I've lost the 5 kilos, wait until I've lost the 10 before I do this activity or that activity, before I leave the house and show up as the new me. So it's all about being that person now before it actually happens, because we are becoming slimmer, sexy, strong daily, day by day. Um, and this is a very exciting way to look at it. And, with all the work that Sue, Cass, and myself have been doing, we have discovered that it's about thinking yourself into the new feeling of what it's like to be slim, sexy, strong, and healthy. And when your body has that new feeling of being the new person that you want to be, you can then actually more naturally just be that person, instead of waiting until you've lost the weight that you want to lose, or until you've got healthier or fitter. So how do we do that? Okay. The first thing I would really suggest and encourage is to start creating your ideal weight persona. And what I mean by that is, what is a persona? The persona is sometimes, we have this person when we go to sleep at night, and we have our dreams. We have this person that we just know who we are inside of ourselves. Maybe the world sees a certain Kim or Cass or Sue or Dave, or Kathy. The world sees a certain you, but you know that there's a lot more to you than what the world is seeing, what your friends, colleagues, peers, and family are seeing. So sometimes we need almost like a platform to be able to practice this person that either we know we are inside, and it's just sort of been hidden and it's a little bit in a cage at the moment, or two, a platform to be that person that, I wish I was a certain way. Once I lose that weight, this is the kind of person I really want to be. And a very good example of having a persona is Beyonce. If you know Beyonce, the singer, um, she's got a persona called Sasha, and that is the person that you see on stage. When you see someone on stage, and I mean, she gives really stellar um, performances, whether you like her or not. I've watched her performances, and they are absolute perfection. Um, and when she shows up on that stage, she steps into her persona of Sasha. So she is quite different on stage to what she's like in her real life. I believe she's quite quiet, private, and leads a normal day-to-day life like many of us. But can you imagine if she stayed that way while being on stage? It would be quite a boring show to go to. And there are actually stars up there where people don't like the shows that much because they don't have that extra special persona when they step onto stage. So if we look at it that way, the stepping onto the stage of your ideal weight, who is this person that you want to show up as? Hello, my new life. Hello, my new me. Who is this new me, physically, in feeling, and in my mind? And why I put the picture of that brain there, the mindset, is because this is also, as you know, what we are doing. We're not only changing the physical you um, and supporting that and the physical environment around you, as we talked about cleaning your closets, decluttering, setting up the environment around you for this person that you want to be. It's also about changing you, my mindset, how you think, how you feel. Hello, my new life. So there's no better way. If you have a persona, and if you don't have one right now, it's okay. Maybe this is the homework you're going to start thinking about it. But as you step out that front door and you put on the crown of this persona, you kind of feel like a different person and you show up differently. I know Cass won't mind me sharing this, but she has a persona and I absolutely just love it. And her persona is called Queen Cat. She's got her Queen Cat mug and her Queen Cat thinking and her mindset, Queen Cat clothing. So that when she steps out the front door and she steps out as Queen Cat, you can just imagine, you just feel different. You stand up straighter, rock the world with confidence. And this is the person that I am and really want to be, and this is how I show up in the world. So what is your Queen Cat? What is your Sasha? Do you have an ideal weight persona? And if you don't, please don't be overwhelmed again by this. I think this is also something that many of us suffer from, in that if we think we haven't got it right, it's like, oh, it's one more thing I don't know or don't have. No, this is an absolute fun time to start investigating and thinking, who would I like to show up as? And it doesn't have to be anyone famous. It could just be that other you that's inside of you, and that has been locked up inside of you for some time, that you, and you even have a name for this person. As a child, I always loved the name Roxanne, and I remember Roxanne, whenever I said the name Roxy, I felt different. I still do, actually. There's a certain feeling and energy that this person Roxy has. That's not my ideal weight persona, but I must say that it's part of her is in my persona. So please give that some thought about who is or what is your ideal weight persona. Okay, and this ideal weight persona is the reason why we do this is, as I said to you, it automatically helps you to get into the feeling of who you are going to be at your perfect weight, at your ideal weight, when you are ideally slim, sexy, strong, and healthy. And remember, that is different for everyone. But when you are there, what is your name going to be when you step out there? How are you going to dress? What kinds of activities do you partake in? What is your lifestyle? Do you now have a jet-setting lifestyle, or are you actually doing things that you always wished you had done but never tried out? Maybe you start going camping. You have a camping lifestyle. Maybe you sell up your house and live differently, or maybe you buy a house and live differently. What kinds of friends do you have? Groups, communities? It's very interesting when I look back on a certain part of my life. My friendships and the groups and communities that I belong to are actually way different, or some of them anyway, are way different to what it is now, because my life, my lifestyle, who I want to show up as in this world and for myself is very different to 10, 15 years ago. So, what kinds of friends will you have? What kinds of groups would you belong to? Your career, your business. Maybe, your weight has actually held you back in your career, or has held you back from starting a business, because when we don't feel great within ourselves, it's very difficult to show up confidently in a business that you're going to start up or grow. So maybe your career might even change. You might have been dreaming, visioning about, when I'm at my ideal weight, then I'm going to be. Then I'm going to do that something that I've always wanted to do. Then I'm going to be that rock star, because I'm going to look like a rock star on stage. Whatever it may be, this is the time to think about that, and your ideal weight persona gets you into the feeling of that. And whenever I get into the feeling of that, it just becomes much more of a possibility. You might love your career and want to stay in your career, but maybe there's a position, a role that you've been yearning for, but you just haven't had the guts or the confidence to actually step into that and speak to your boss or whoever is needed, or even apply for it because you just felt something was holding you back. And maybe that something that was holding you back was lack of confidence. And if we had to dig deep, it's very possibly due to not being the kind of person that you want to be in your own body. I know this is very true for myself because, especially now in hindsight, I can see how my weight held me back from certain activities, stepping out there, confidence, asking for what I wanted. I used to sort of stand in the background, and definitely at my ideal weight, I'm a lot more confident and feel more comfortable in certain roles now. Also, when you're at your ideal weight, what is your attitude going to be like? Can you imagine it being different to what it was, a couple of years ago, even a couple of weeks ago? I can already hear, in the messages that your attitude, your mindset, your feeling for life is changing. So if it's already changed in 5 weeks, how's it going to change when 10 weeks down the line or at your ideal weight? Okay, so please think of these things when you create your ideal weight persona. Now, very important, everyone, what I really want to address this week as well um, are the inner obstacles in our lives. And specifically, I want to talk about our inner obstacles to achieving our ideal weight, because that is what S3H is about. But of course, as I'm sure you've discovered, that this can apply to any area of your life. And this is what I think is seriously a huge part of the success of S3H. The success that you are having is because it not only touches on your weight and your health and exercising, it actually touches on every area of your life. And if we work on one area of our lives, it doesn't matter what area, it really has a ripple effect. Just like that pebble you throw into the pond, and you see the ripples affecting, each ripple affects another one, affects another one. In everything in my life, I have discovered that if I work on one area, no matter how small that area, and I get that right, or I make progress, it doesn't have to even get right. If I make progress, I'm feeling so much happier in that area that my happiness, my contentment, my progress spills onto the other areas. And before you know it, without even intentionally thinking or doing it, um, all the other areas of your life start showing up better, start showing up easier. There's more of a flow, and all of a sudden you're making a lot more progress in your life in general. So the things that actually hold us back, there are three main things that hold us back in progressing forward, and that is boundaries, triggers, and patterns. And I absolutely love dealing with this in weight loss, in ideal weight, in any area of your life, whether it's time management, reaching a goal, um, addressing the emotional issues, etc. It really is about your boundaries, triggers, and patterns. And with Cass's work and Sue's work, as you know, we address all of these in eating and in the mindset. Okay. And so now we're going to do it more on a behavioral level. So let's look at our first one, and those are boundaries. Interesting enough, a couple of sessions ago, someone in a live session asked me, "So, Kim, what is a boundary?" Because this person had never had boundaries with regards to eating ever before in their lives. Whereas, I'm completely different. I put boundaries on myself since I was a teenager, which also didn't work for me because these boundaries actually stopped me from leading a normal, healthy life with regards to food and my weight. So there are healthy boundaries and boundaries also that may not be that healthy. But today we're talking about boundaries. And it was so interesting to hear that question, because what are boundaries? So personal boundaries they are guidelines for you. Remember, everyone's boundaries are going to be different. We are all very unique and very different people. But there are guidelines and limits that you set for yourself that determine what you will and will not participate in life. And because we're specifically talking about ideal weight here, there are guidelines and limits that you set for yourself that determine what you will and will not participate in with regards achieving your ideal weight. They also, when you have these boundaries set in place, they convey to others how you want to be treated, the acceptable ways of how you want to be treated. So I'm going to give you a simple example. Let's say one of your guidelines for yourself is, that you will not be, when you go to the movies, you will not be eating popcorn anymore. And you've discovered that the reason for that is, first of all, it is, especially at the movies, the popcorn that you buy there is so full of MSG and preservatives that alone, if you know anything about preservatives, will actually cause you to put on weight and hold water, but actually to put on weight as well, and hinder weight loss or getting you to your ideal weight. So if one of your boundaries is to not eat popcorn when you go to the movies anymore, I would suggest you replace it with something else, getting something healthy, taking a protein bar um, to, to the movies, one of your healthy protein bars. And then also, so let's say now you take a friend with you, you go to the movies and they insist. You know what it's like when people want to do something, and but then they want you to do it too, and they insist on the fact that you need to buy some popcorn and eat some popcorn. And in fact, and this has happened to me, someone will even go out of their way to go and buy you the popcorn because they might think that it has to do with money. So if we let them know our personal boundaries, if we say, Kim, I'm really looking at achieving my ideal weight, and one of the things for now that I have decided not to eat for now is popcorn in the movies. And I'd really appreciate it if you could respect that, because I know you also want me to achieve my ideal weight. So now that person knows the reason for the boundary. And I'm almost sure that just in the way that you share it with that person, they will respect it. And the next time you go to the movies with them, they won't be forcing you to have a box of popcorn, and they won't go sort of behind your back and go and buy you a box of popcorn. That's what I mean by personal boundaries. So what I love about personal boundaries is that we do need to voice them for people to understand what our boundaries are. So many times we have our personal boundaries in our mind, but no one else knows what they are. They can't be mind readers. So in a very respectful way, just let people know what your boundaries are. For the next couple of weeks, I will have a glass of wine when I go out, but I'm only having one because I really don't want to jeopardize my ideal weight loss. Just very simply like that. Also, I know Cash shares this as well, and I love this example. If you go to a restaurant and the people are insisting that you eat certain food, all you can say, and this really flies nowadays because there are so many allergies, etc., going around, and you can just say, I'm really sorry, I can't have the pasta, but I'm gluten intolerant. And as soon as you say you're gluten intolerant or sugar intolerant, or you might even be diabetic at this stage, I'm sure that will be improved with the program. As soon as people hear that, they know there's a valid reason for your boundary. I promise you, they will just step aside and stop harassing. So think about your personal boundaries. Personal boundaries is about not people pleasing. So the reason why a lot of us, and I know I fell into that trap, and until I really started working on myself, is I didn't know how to say no. First of all, I didn't know how to say no. I didn't want to say no because I wanted to be accepted and approved by everyone around me. And I thought that by saying no would do the opposite of that. But in fact, it really didn't. Now, when I say no respectfully, people get to understand me more, what I'm about, and actually even appreciate that and say, gee whiz, Kim, I think it's amazing that you say no to eating popcorn at the movies. I would love to learn how to do that. That's what happens when you start saying no and you show up as you, the person that you want to be. People actually admire that, and they want to know, how do you do that? I also want that. I also know that there are people on the S3H program that have joined the program because they've seen someone else do what they wish they could do. And what better model for you to be than to, just by being you, by setting boundaries, by saying no, you're actually being a source of encouragement, and you could actually be the very reason that someone joins S3H and starts working on their ideal way. So it's really about learning to say no. And it doesn't have to be harsh. It's just a simple, I'm sorry, I would love to, but I really don't have the time right now. I'm sorry, I would love to, but I'm on an ideal weight program and I really don't want to break my program now. Or yes, I would love to, but do you mind if I bring my food along? And more people are doing that. And I think if you really love the person and they're a good friend of yours, they really don't mind at all. Okay. So what are your personal boundaries regarding being on the S3H program? If you haven't already thought about that, I think it's a good time to start. Okay, so the benefits of healthy boundaries, which I've already mentioned some, but first of all, your needs are met. Okay, now you have your boundaries, people listen to you. And because of your needs are being met, there's less anger, frustration, anxiety, and resentment towards others because they are actually respecting your boundaries. What I love is when I respect my own boundaries and have my boundaries met, I respect myself for actually adhering and following through on what I want to follow through on, instead of saying yes all the time when I wanted to say no. And because of that, the more I do it, it actually builds up self-confidence. I can do this, I can respect myself, and builds up self-esteem. So in saying no, or in saying yes to the right thing, you actually, it's like, without even knowing it, you start building up more and more self-confidence, self-esteem, and self-trust in yourself, knowing that, you know what, I've got this. I can actually do this, and I can trust myself to say no, and I can trust myself to say yes to the right thing for me. When you have personal boundaries, there are less excuses, less complaints, less blaming, and you feel less like the victim. I absolutely love this, and this is so true for myself and so many of the S3H people that have shared this. You just stop making excuses. You stop complaining. You have your boundaries. You know what they are. You know that you have chosen your boundaries, and you don't have to point fingers anymore. Such and such made me do something. Well, I really didn't want to do that, but I still said yes. And guess what? You're now communicating better with the people around you, expressing your needs, and because of the better communication, relationships improve. You will know that, I mean, everything's about relationships, whether you're in a romantic relationship, you're married, you're not married, relationships at work, relationships with your family, relationships with your peers. If they don't know what you need, what you want, and how you think, they actually can't communicate with you effectively to support you. And they are going to make you feel resentful and anxious and frustrated. They're not actually doing that. We're doing it to ourselves because we have not shared with them what our needs are. So just by having healthy boundaries and by sharing them, we actually create better relationships, communication with ourselves and others, we build self-esteem, self-trust, and we actually get to do what we want to do. And here in S3H, we actually get to stay on our program because we want to, and we get to our ideal weight. So many, many reasons to have healthy boundaries. I'm sure you will agree. Now, the one that I love as well are triggers. So what is a trigger? Yeah, maybe you've heard of this word or not, but a trigger is something that occurs when any certain something, and I'll talk to that, that certain something is a trigger, causes a negative emotional response. So something happens, you feel fear, you feel sadness, you feel overwhelmed, you feel pain, you feel panic, you feel helpless. I can't do this. Maybe an hour before, the world was your oyster and you felt I can do anything I want to. And then something happens. And all of a sudden, with me, I used to feel like that little girl again, that little girl that's done something wrong or that can't stand up for herself. That was one of my negative emotional responses. But what's important here is to identify that, but what caused it? What caused you from going on a complete high, cloud 9, cloud 10, and this can happen instantly, within an instant to an hour, or by the end of the day, you are in a place of negative emotional response. So we need to discover what those triggers are, because these triggers with us will often lead to emotional eating. To combat or to overcome the sadness or the overwhelm or the panic, there's a big gaping hole that we feel, and it's kind of scary and very fearful. So especially if we are already overweight, the chances are that what we've been doing is, whenever this has happened, we want the feeling to stop. So guess what happens? We either go to the kitchen cupboard or we go to the fridge, and we stop that feeling by eating something that we like, eating something nice. Often it's not even something nice, it's just readily accessible, and we eat it. And while we're eating, we are feeling a little bit better, and the feeling goes away. Maybe the feeling of panic or overwhelm, etc., goes away. We're keeping our minds busy with eating and with food. And if it's also the wrong kinds of foods, it's going to give us a high. So, if you're going to go and eat a McDonald's burger or something like that, you're going to feel good in the moment because you're kind of getting a sugar rush or carb rush. But guess what? That rush does not last very long. And now you've just eaten a McDonald's burger or 2 or 3, and then half an hour later, you are feeling the exact same negative emotional response that you felt, 30 minutes earlier. So now you're back to square one, which is not what we want. So to identify the trigger, because when you know what the trigger is, then you can work with that, identify it, work with it, so that you don't, move towards behaviors that are going to sabotage you. So identify your trigger. Now, I want to take you back, everyone, to week 2, when I shared with you a template on working through emotional responses. And this template is a very, very sure way of identifying what your trigger was. So if you're not sure what the trigger was, for me, sometimes the trigger is maybe I'm just too busy. I'm taking on too much responsibility. Or I haven't planned my day. I didn't plan the night before. Or I said yes when I wanted to say no. These are triggers for me. Or when I'm just too hungry, too excited, too tired. These triggers cause an emotional response in me, and then because of that emotional response, which you want to quell, can then lead to emotional eating. So I have identified many of my triggers, and one of the ways that I have identified it is through using that template. So there may be some triggers you already know what they are. That's fantastic, because when they happen, you can say, wait, that's a trigger. And because it's a trigger, I know what's going to happen. Let me rather deal with the trigger and not deal with it by going and emotionally eating. But if you don't know what the trigger is, please take out that template that I sent you 2 weeks ago and work through that template from the top. What is the situation? What caused it? Who was involved? What time of day? What feeling did it lead to? And work through your template. If you work through that template, I'm almost sure that you will identify what the trigger was for that situation that you just experienced. And once you know what the trigger is, it's like, aha, I get it now. That's what caused it. And so that's going to help you prevent going into a negative space, if not now, definitely the next time it happens. So very, very important to identify what your triggers are. The third one that we spoke about that I think is very, very important to address are our patterns. You know, our patterns have kept us in a place that we don't want to be for so long. You know, we want to lose weight, we want to lose those 2 or 5 or 10 or 40 kilograms, whatever it may be. But because we have not changed certain patterns, we tend to talk about it, maybe start, and then within a couple of weeks or even less, go back to our old ways. And one of the reasons is because of our pattern. So what is a pattern? A pattern is something that repeats itself in a predictable way. It is something that you always do that generally leads to undesirable outcomes, but you continue to do it. Okay? Do you know what those patterns are for you? So one of my patterns was, you know, I'm really going to start a diet on Monday. Okay? So guess what happens? One of my patterns? Well, I'm never going to be able to eat all those foods that I want after I start my diet because I'm really serious about this diet. So come the weekend, I go all out and eat all the foods that I want to eat. Must probably put on a kilo or 2 because I can put on weight very easily depending on the foods that I eat. Come Monday, everything's fine. I start my diet, and guess what? My resolve that I thought I had isn't there. So sometimes the diet would last. Sometimes it lasted for a long time. Sometimes it lasted for 3-6 months. I got to my ideal weight. But because I hadn't addressed all the stuff that we address in S3H, such as your emotions and your mindset and the environment inside of you and outside of you, I invariably, you know, over time went back to my old patterns and started putting on weight again. So that was one of my patterns. And I actually knew that I got to a point where I knew that when I said, you know, I'm going to start Monday, I knew exactly what was going to happen. And I had to change the pattern. So what I did to change the pattern was get some real support, i.e. S3H, real coaching support, something that addresses not only the diet, but also the thinking and the feeling, the emotions, and also to get some support. And the last time that I was really, really serious about my getting to my ideal weight and have kept my weight at a very nice a place right now, I didn't start on a Monday. I think it was the middle of the week that I started. It was a Wednesday. So I changed that pattern. Do you know what your patterns are? What are things that you keep on doing that are actually sabotaging you? So how do we stop that sabotaging pattern behavior? How do we stop that pattern? Well, I've got something called a pattern interrupt that we are going to use to actually stop that pattern and replace it with something else. Because if we don't interrupt the pattern, like I interrupted the pattern with, wait a minute, I need something different. And Mondays don't work for me. It's going to be on a Wednesday. So my whole mindset was different when I engaged in achieving my ideal weight. So how do we create a pattern interrupt? Let's look at that. Okay, so we're really going to look at how we're going to create a pattern interrupt. There are three different ways I love using to create a pattern interrupt. So first of all, as we're actually doing it right now on the program, and you can push pause at any point in time, write down one of your negative patterns of behavior or thinking. And let's work with something that's specifically related to achieving your ideal weight. Write down a pattern that you know of, that you know that you are still doing, that you would just really like to stop doing. Okay. So once you've got that, and just write it in one simple sentence. This is not a journaling exercise where journaling has its place, like we spoke about in week 2, and Sue also talks about. This is different. I want you to be concise. What is the pattern? Okay. So for example, myself, I'm going to start my diet on Monday, but on weekends I eat whatever I want to eat. Okay. So then you take your statement. You can use one of these 3 different ways, or you can use a combination of it. Take that statement and write down what is the exact opposite of that statement. So take the statement, and with each word, what is the exact opposite of that? So let's say, for example, my opposite would be, I'm going to start a sound, healthy eating program on a Wednesday, and I'm going to get emotional support with my program as well. Okay, so what is the opposite of your statement? Or another pattern interrupt is to change your environment. We've already spoken about that, changing your closet, changing your kitchen. Maybe your whole workspace needs to change to encourage ideal weight loss. Maybe you actually need to change your environment of the kinds of activities that you are doing, the kinds of people that you are hanging around with. So for example, on a Friday night, if your friends and buddies, if you always normally go to the pub, have a couple of beers, glasses of wine, and get some nice pub fried food, and you know that Friday night is actually sabotaging all the great work that you did during the week, you need to change that environment. So replace it with something more encouraging and healthy on a Friday evening. And remember, we learned how to say no, so you can say to your buddies, guys, I'm really on this fantastic program. I really want to achieve my ideal weight. On Fridays, I've now decided to join Taekwondo. Does anyone want to join me? Okay. And then another way of interrupting a pattern is to do something quite silly or unusual. And what I mean by that is, and this is really what people can do. So, for example, if you find yourself 9 o'clock every night, you always go to the fridge. My pattern is going to the fridge at 9 o'clock, and I start snacking. So 9 o'clock comes, do something silly or different or unusual. 9 o'clock, maybe put on some music, start dancing in front of the TV, or decide at 9 o'clock I'm going to open the door and I'm going to take out the trash instead of going to the fridge. So, or 9 o'clock you do something silly, crazy that you've always been wanting to do, or start crocheting, or start a new hobby that you've been wanting to do. 9 o'clock at night, why not? Get out your vision board on your kitchen table. It doesn't matter how crazy it looks to others, and start doing your vision board. So any one of these 3 will actually take you out of the pattern that you've been in, and because you're replacing it with something different, and it will start creating something new. Remember, everyone, we also talked about, to create something new, we need regularity and we need consistency. So you can't do it just one night. For example, the 9 o'clock story, you can't do it one night and expect it to change. Every night at 9, when you want to go, you feel yourself going to the fridge and opening the fridge and wanting to eat something in there, you do something crazy or unusual. Maybe you put on, I've got a fantastic video, an exercise video that I've been carrying around for about the last 12 years. Just DVD, you just put the DVD in and say, well, how about doing 10 minutes of exercise? Maybe you can get a jump on trampoline and start jumping up and down. Okay. But also, as I said, you could also use all three of these pattern interrupts together and create something. Journal the outcomes of this and how it's actually working for you, and journal what changes in your thought processes and your feeling when you start creating this pattern interrupt. So this is a fantastic way to interrupt any pattern that you want to change, especially as we're talking about achieving your ideal weight. But if there's anything else in your life that you want to interrupt the pattern of, which by the way, guys, might be indirectly affecting you or sabotaging your ideal weight, please use this. It's a really great tool. Okay, wonderful. So, and to go with that on our next slide comes empowering self-talk. Okay, so start creating a positive self-talk habit. And I know what you know, I think we're all very familiar with the negative self-talk. What I mean by that is that little gremlin that sits on your shoulder and starts talking negatively to you about, you know, how wrong you are, how pathetic you are, you know, what a failure you are. Here we go again. I started this and I can't even do this day correctly. If I rate my day, it was only a 5. But what about looking at positive self-talk? You know what? I've been on this program for 4 or 5 weeks. I've lost weight. I'm getting healthier. I'm off the sugar. I rated myself at 5 today, which I think is absolutely phenomenal because a few weeks ago I was rating myself at 0 or 1. So start talking positively to yourself instead of all the negative self-talk. Because very, very importantly, let's go back to Cass's session in week 1. Do you remember the Dr. Emoto with the water? Remember, we are 70 to 80% water. And when we talk negatively to ourselves, remember those pictures that Cass showed us. That is what is happening to us when we use negative self-talk. So please remember that. So swap that and change it for positive self-talk. And the way we do this is first identify all your negative self-talk traps. So if you're talking negatively, what is it that you're talking negatively about? And evaluate the self-talk. Put a magnifying glass, become a detective, an investigator of your own thoughts. Put the spotlight, put a magnifying glass on it and say, you know what? Is that true? Is it true that I'm a failure? You know? And then you say to yourself, and maybe it's like, yeah, well, yes, I think it is true. I am a bit of a failure. Then I want to encourage you to use this question. Is it really, really, really true that I'm a failure? And you know what, guys, when you really ask yourself, is it really, really, really true? What happens in that activity is that it forces you to think about whether you really are a failure or not, or whatever the statement in the negative self-talk. So it forces you to stop and think. It also forces you to think of a more true statement. Well, maybe sometimes I do fail. Sorry, that's just my little doggy there who insists on sitting on my lap. You know, sometimes it is true that I fail. But is it true that I fail 100% of the time? I have a feeling not. You know, we all fail or make mistakes, make errors. That's normal. And we also in the process of actually limiting those errors with achieving our ideal weight. But the fact is, and I'm almost 100% sure that you are not 100% failure or whatever the negative self-talk is. So please use that statement, is it really, really true? And replace the negative talk then with a more true statement. For example, well, you know, I didn't do so great this time, but you know what? That doesn't happen all the time. And generally, I actually do very well at that, whatever that may be. So just by giving a more true statement is the real reality. And you can now operate from what is true and what is not true. and create a story around that. Okay, what you can also do is replace this person on your shoulder with an angel. Replace the gremlin, the negative self-talk. He might even look like something, or have a certain voice, or have a certain feeling. Replace that with someone who cares about you, an angel who's looking after you, and actually loves you and encourages you, and says, Kim, you know what? You've taken this step. Look how amazing you've done. There are lots of people out there in the world that have never and will never take the step, but you did. I'm here to watch over you. Let's take the next best step. And of course, going back to Cass's work as well, is immediately then, start using your powerful affirmation. For me, still the number one is, I love being slim, sexy, strong, and healthy. Whenever I say that, I just feel amazing. And I also have a feeling of how I want to feel all the time. But whatever that empowering affirmation is, use that, because that definitely can lift your energy and your spirits immediately. So everyone, this has been quite a session, and there's a lot to practice. But remember, Rome wasn't built in a day. So that's also the power of the S3H program, is we don't have to do it all right now. Choose the one thing that you know you need to work on right now for yourself, and work with that, okay? If there are two things that you're able to work on, that's fine. But whatever it is, choose one and work it well. So the actions that I'm going to encourage you this week is to have fun with creating your persona. Who is this persona? Who is this Kim, this Cass, this Sue, this Jenny, this Dave, this Mark? Who is this person that when they step out of their front door, or better still, when you wake up in the morning, who is this persona that you are stepping into, that you want to be and show up in the world as? So I've given some pictures there that I just thought were kind of fun, and maybe just to give you some ideas of a persona. But remember, it doesn't have to be anyone famous. It could be exactly the person that you already know you are and want to be, and have given a name to. Like me, as a child, I had the name Roxy. Okay, so that's something for the week to have fun with. The other actions for the week, everyone, boundaries. What boundaries do you need to set? What boundaries do you need to set? And sometimes this is scary, but as we suggested, it no longer has to be scary. It's just about how we actually share those boundaries. And it doesn't have to be negatively or aggressively. It's just simply, I would love to, but I can't do that now. Or, give me a couple of weeks. I just want to settle into my program first, and then I would love to go out for dinner. And guys, just remember, going out for dinner on S3H is not hard work at all. You are not on a program that you have to eat, some weird foods, or cannot eat certain foods. Nothing's actually taboo. It's about the quantity and the quality of the food. And you can go just about anywhere and have a protein and a salad without having to eat the fried chips and the sauces and, all of those kinds of things. Quite frankly, nowadays, if you go out for dinner with me, my whole eating plan has changed. I just eat completely differently. If I really want to have a sauce or just taste the sauce, I always ask them to put it on the side. I use my fork, put my fork in the sauce, and then use that to cut or eat my salad with. Because all you need is the actual flavor of the sauce. You don't need that whole bowl of sauce. So what boundaries do you need to set? Triggers. Please, 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 I highly encourage you to use the template that I sent, or if you already know your triggers, or if you have a feeling you know what they are, start really putting that spotlight on them, and just write them down. Just make a note of yourself what your triggers are. Sometimes it could be people that trigger you. It could be a situation. It could be music. It could be a certain food. You know, there's certain foods that I know I need to be careful of because they trigger me binging. For example, nuts. I absolutely love nuts. So if I'm going to buy nuts, I better buy a small packet of nuts because if I've got a kilogram of nuts in my cupboard, the chances are I'm going to eat quite a lot of them, okay? So I know there's certain foods that trigger me. What are your triggers? Identify those. Because remember, everyone, that whatever it is in life, once you identify what it is, you then have a stake in the ground. You then have something to work with. But if we don't know what it is, it's very difficult to work positively to try and change something or replace it if we don't know what it is. Lastly, as well, we talked about our patterns of behavior. What are your repeated patterns that are counting against you, that are sabotaging you, that are stopping you from achieving your ideal weight or progressing as quickly as you would like to? What is that pattern that you keep on repeating? Okay, and what pattern interrupt can you create to start practicing and replacing the old pattern with the new empowering pattern? Okay, so those are your actions for the week with your ideal persona, and now boundaries, triggers, and your patterns of behavior. And in closing, everyone, that concludes our week 4. I'm sure you would agree that there's a lot to work on, and I continue, and I know myself and Cass and Sue, because we talk a lot, and we really do work on anything that we would want to improve upon, even replace. So with every intake that I do, there's a certain focus area of mine that I focus on. You know, so we keep doing the work. And you keep doing the work, because this is not a diet. It really isn't. It's a lifestyle. It's a way to the more empowered thinking, feeling, emotional, and physically ideal person for you. It is your new lifestyle. It's just so exciting. Just to diarize, coming up, please keep an eye, sorry, I need to change that, on Sue's email for the date and time of her next upcoming webinar. Very, very important, everyone. This is to do with metabolic adjustment. It is really imperative that I would say that you join this webinar. I will tell you one of my failures with many of the diets that I went on was I would reach my ideal weight, but then I didn't go on an adjustment phase. And because of that, my body didn't really, really get used to the new weight. And before I knew it, guess what? As I said earlier on, I started packing on the kilos. I cannot express the importance of metabolic adjustment more than I can. This really is a lifesaver. You're doing all the work, so let's do adjustment properly, so that your body locks into your new weight. Your genes lock into this new you, this new genetic formula, and gets ready for the next stage. So keep an eye out for the date and the time. Sue will, of course, let you know that. And in closing, I just want to say have a fabulous week. I hope this has been a great session for you. Just remember that both, or not both, Sue, myself, and Cass, we are experts in different areas of coaching and ideal weight and achieving the ideal person you want to be. If you feel that you need some extra support in something, whichever area it may be, please reach out and ask for help. That's another thing that we start developing on the SVH is asking for support, asking for help. We'd be very, very happy to help you there. But other than that, please have a great week. Work the program, and looking forward to chatting to you soon. Take care. Have a good week.